Hi, Tessa.
Hey, Tessa.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jana.
Jeff's coming in from Massachusetts, Tanya. He's one of our core team members. And he was on our Living Autistically panel at the Neuroscience Conference when we did it live in 2019 before the pandemic. Jeff, I was just talking to Tanya's son, Joe, and telling him he should do the panel one year.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to figure out how old he was when he spoke to our parent mentor. Tanya's son spoke to our parent mentor event before.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Karen. Nice to see you. Tanya, Karen runs our ministry at Autism Tree. I don't know if you know that, for like 18 years. And then Tessa, hi, how long have you been with Autism Tree now?
I think like this is 2 months.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Been doing all kinds of awesome stuff for us. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started and just add people as they come in.
Sounds good.
And we have usually a good amount of parents who, are working during the day, but they log in to our YouTube, and we have like 40 to 60 parents watching all of our lunch and learns. So hello to everyone at home. A couple Zoom rules for those of you who are new or returning, haven't been here in a while. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We recommend speaker view for presentation. Video sharing is optional. And please type all questions and comments into the chat. A quick update from Autism Tree since the COVID-19 pandemic hit San Diego last March of 2020. I can't believe it's been almost 2 full years of the pandemic life, but we've been measuring our social media outreach since then, we pivoted all of our programs to be online, 19 of our 20 programs. To be online. We've reached over 664,000 people through all of our social media channels. So I got to give a shout out to my interns who have been managing those. We are Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the above. We even had a few interns doing our Twitch, which is completely brand new. So thanks to all of everybody who's been following us since last March. As well as our posts have been shared over 1,080 times. So thanks for sharing our content and our videos. We love to post all of our videos each week. We have 436 videos on our YouTube channel, and we posted 382 of those videos since last March 12th. So a great majority, and that's all from our volunteers and our program directors creating video content for our kids and families during this time, so we all feel connected and still like a big family. One of those series, we have tons of playlists on our YouTube channel, is our Reading with Autism Tree series, which is our volunteers read children's books to our kids. We've reached over 54,000 people just through that. And we've also provided 340 virtual events to date and have 20 events coming up between now and the end of November. And we're always adding new events as well. So there's plenty to get involved in. Like I mentioned, we have 19 out of our 20 programs that are going on right now. 18 are virtual and 4 are in person. We've had our Bridge to the Beach program in person, and we're now transitioning to a few hybrid programs. We have our dance class that's both on Zoom and in person, as well as our National Charity League and USD football programs are now in person as well, taking all COVID precautions as we meet outdoors. So for those families who want to come out and join us, reach out to me and I'll plug you in. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Dana Hoff. She'll introduce our guest speaker today for our 69th Lunch and Learn.
69. Can you believe it? It's just like surreal to me. I'm really blessed just by everybody who has been so dedicated to these Lunch and Learns. And I know for me personally, it has probably been one of the biggest blessings during this pandemic. I feel so many great things have happened week to week to week. And I know today having Tanya on here is no accident. I think sometimes, Tanya, when we're starting to feel fatigue, which it makes sense because right now we're going into Q4 of the year, which every year, I think for all nonprofits our size, it's really intense. It's like Okay, we're in October, November, December. It's crunch time. And we are doing our neuroscience conference for the first time virtually. The center where we usually have it in person isn't even open yet because of COVID-19. And so our chairman, Dr. Motri, is actually thrilled because he's from Brazil. Our moderator, Roger Bingham, is from Europe, and they are ecstatic that we're doing it all virtual because they can really have their colleagues from around the world come and be part of it, where when we did it in person, that wasn't possible. The other truly exciting thing is that we have a $25,000 sponsor, Neurocrin, who you might have heard of, Tayna, because I know you're so savvy with biotech, and they do seizure medication for a seizure drug that is for a very, very specific type of seizure called that you have to have an MRI to catch. It's called Landau-Kleffner. So we're really, really excited that they are our platinum sponsor. We'll be sending out a video very soon that I haven't even seen yet, but Rebecca and Rich Horner have, and they are really excited about this video that Neurocrin did as our platinum sponsor. So we are weeks away. We are in crunch time for the neuroscience conference. It's Friday, November 12th. If you haven't registered, please do. Send it out to your colleagues, your network, your family. Tayna, 2 people on the call right now have been on our past Living Autistically panel at the neuroscience conference. That's Jeff Snyder, who's here from Massachusetts, and Terrence Partridge. And they've done a documentary about Terrence, and Jeff has become an incredible self-advocate in the time that we have known him since 2019. And then week over week, we've just seen Jeff make such a big impact with his advocacy, with his blog and speaking. And so I'm really excited, Tayna, that they're on the call today and for you to meet them. And what I really just want everyone to know is how grateful I am for your positivity. And I think everybody always brings their heart and their authentic self to Lunch and Learns. And that's really what makes it so special. And I know already on the pre-call with Tayna, she was just saying, I have so much to say. And I was telling her that we welcome her to say whatever is on her heart is a blessing to us. And what's incredible is when I look at all the moms in the history of Autism Tree, which is a tidal wave of mothers in 18 years, there is not even one exaggeration that Tayna Carroll is one of the top 2 smartest moms in all of Autism Tree, and that's not including me. It's including the Stanford mom you met on a previous Lunch and Learn. And ever since I met Anne and Tayna around the same time, which I think Tayna is 2006. When I think of Tayna, I think of day one in the Bay Area. And I always know, like, she's so smart. I always go, oh my gosh, Tayna is just such a brilliant mom and has used her incredible mind on her own 2 beautiful sons, which she's going to share about. But I'm always blessed, Tayna, when you share any of your, high level understanding of some complex issues that affect our kids on the autism spectrum. So it's honestly with incredible gratitude that I introduce you today, and just feel like we have one of our board members always say OGs, the originals. And I've never ever introduced someone that way, but I'm introducing you as one of my OGs. And I mean it like in a rock star way. So thank you for being an OG in my world. I couldn't be more blessed by every interaction we have ever had. And I hope we have one soon. Rebecca always pulls some pictures from the archives. I don't know if these go all the way back to the beginning, but there's some fun ones. We always did parent mentor events at the Bonafides company, Customer Service Royalty, and that is where we are. There's Laura Bonafide with Tayna, and Laura has girls with autism. She has triplets, and her 2 girls have autism. Laura and I grew up together, and she's actually a board member And her family's real estate company did a golf tournament for over 10 years for us that funded all of our programs up there. And Tayna has been together with that Bonafide family since day one that I met her at their actual real estate office at a parent mentor event night way back in 2006. But this is from 2017. That photo next to it is of her, Dr. Novak, who runs all of our global research programs. And we also train speech and language pathologists at San Diego State with Dr. Novak. And then the photo next to that is Tayna, Lisa Kaufman, her son Joe, and Joel Anderson. And that was when Joe did and Tayna did a parent mentor event, which I will never forget. It was amazing. I think we have a couple more slides too, Tayna. I really love this photo because it just feels like a lifetime ago that we did breakfast at Tiffany's, which is 1,000-person luncheon. We had 100 tables of 10. And there's Laura next to the mom I was telling you, and many of you met her on the Lunch and Learn, Anne, then Dr. Novak, myself, and Tayna. And I would say that photo right there is some OGs, the Bay Area OGs right there. Really lights me up to share that with you. And then if you look to the far left, there's Lisa with Tayna and Tony Odom, who ran the commercial real estate division of Customer Service Realty, which is now they sold that and they're part of Compass. And it's just a group of people up there. I won't go through everyone. I kind of want to focus it all back on Tayna. There's Tayna and her son Joe in the middle picture, and also in the right picture at the 2015 mentor event we did up in the Bay Area. Tayna, do these pictures just melt your heart of your guys, how little they are in 2015 out at San Jose State with the football players?
Yes. Wow.
So sweet.
Crazy.
Love these photos. Just, it really, I wasn't planning on introducing you as an OG, but it sure feels nice. Just thank you for being part of the history. It feels like of Autism Tree for 18 years. I know it might have not been the whole thing, Tayna, but in my heart, it feels like it. It feels like we've been together since day one. And it's just huge, warm welcome to Tayna. And it's a gift to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Dana. It's a blessing to be here. And honestly, I think of you as a dear friend. So I miss you a lot. So next time you're up in the Bay Area, please contact me.
Yes.
But thanks for the warm welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen now. I'm not technology savvy, so bear with me. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Dana mentioned, I have 3 sons, and this is a picture. It says today, but this is a picture of my sons taken in July. We actually went to Hawaii this year on a family vacation, which is kind of a rarity, as you probably know. And it was probably the first time we had been on a vacation for like 5 years. So despite COVID and everything, but it's just a picture of today of my sons. As Dana mentioned, I actually have 2 sons on the spectrum. My oldest son in this picture is the dark-haired one to the left, and he is just turned 19 recently. And then I have a middle son that's 16. I guess he's pretty neurotypical in most areas. And then my youngest son is also on the autism spectrum, and his name is Danik, and he is 12 at this time. So I just wanted to give you a picture of where we are today. And then, let's see, why is this not moving? Sean, can you help me with moving the screen? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is pretty much my story of when it began. And this is a picture of my oldest son, Joe. And this picture was taken when he was a little bit past 3 years of age. And this is when we didn't know anything about autism. We had no idea. Joe was a typical developing child up until about the age of 18 to 20 months. And then we started to see a huge regression. But at that time, I literally knew nothing about autism, had never heard of it before, other than, on one particular movie. And It just wasn't even on our radar. So as I mentioned, he was typical developing, and then about at the age of 18 to 20 months, he started showing signs of not responding to his name. His speech became delayed. And the biggest thing is he started having really bad behavior problems. And this picture symbolizes how he was at that time. If he wanted to do something, in this picture, he wants to ride an adult bike, and he's only like 3. And he would just get so angry and have these temper tantrums. And of course, children at that age have temper tantrums, but this is beyond anything. I mean, it would go on for 15 to 20 minutes. And we had no idea, being that he was our first child, that this was something more than just typical toddler behavior, but it was very difficult. Here's another picture of him at this time. So he not only had a lot of temper tantrums, but he would get very rigid about things. And it became so difficult that it was hard to take him places. And on this particular trip, we're actually in Virginia Beach in these pictures, and we live in the Bay Area. On this particular trip, on the way home, I happened to sit next to a developmental pediatrician who specialized in autism. And he was kicking the seat on the airplane, and he wouldn't stop. And she mentioned to me, she said, "Hey, maybe I can help you out. I'm a developmental pediatrician." And I was like, okay. So she gave me some tips to get him to stop. And after that, she said, I noticed you guys in the waiting room, and I was watching the behavior of your child. And she said, "Have you ever considered getting him evaluated for autism?" And I said, "What is autism? Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" So she started to kind of go into some of the behaviors, and she said, "I specialize in this particular disorder, and I noticed his behaviors when I was watching you before we boarded the plane." So needless to say, I was a little bit taken aback. I didn't know how to respond to her. I actually thought it was kind of rude. So I left there, and I kind of told my husband the story, and he was just like, whatever. So that week, Joe started a new preschool. And in the preschool, within 2 weeks, the director called me in and said that she wanted to have a meeting with me. And she said, "I noticed behaviors with him that are not typical. He's like licking the walls. He doesn't answer his name. He's very hyper. He won't sit still. He won't listen. He's not learning, et cetera, et cetera." And she said, "The only reason why I know this is because my dad has a PhD in behavioral therapy, and he's actually an expert." So she knew the nuances. So what are the chances actually is literally within 1 week, that I have a developmental pediatrician, and B, the director of the preschool, whose dad is a famous behavioralist, telling me that they think my child's on the autism spectrum. So it was crazy. So it definitely was a sign. So needless to say, after that, she helped me begin the journey with autism, and I got him tested. And in the Bay Area, we have these amazing researchers. So it wasn't that hard to kind of find the resources for that. And we got him tested, and he officially became on the autism spectrum. It did take a while though, because his behaviors were a lot more like ADHD and speech delay. So some of the evaluators didn't think that he had autism because he had pretty good eye contact and things like that. And he was somewhat social, but it was more like the speech delay and the behaviors. So it took a long while to actually get the official notification. And then we were on our way with autism. It was very difficult, of course, to hear though that your child has a problem, and then of course to know what to do at this point. So after this time, that basically led us to years of therapy, nutrition, and a lot of patience. So I'm just going to kind of go through what happened with Joe. And of course, I'm going to go through his story first, and then I will get to my second part, which is my youngest son, which is a little bit more harder. So, of course, we got the diagnosis, and with that comes, some resources, but it was very difficult because this was 2005 when I got the diagnosis. And by the way, I was pregnant with my second son. So needless to say, I was very stressed out. But I wrote down, I looked back and I wrote down the autism rates at that time. So in 2005, 1 in 150 children were diagnosed with autism. And in 2020, it's officially now 1 in 54 and 1 in 34 boys. So, I mean, it's just kind of amazing to look back. And in 15 years, the rates of autism have gone from 1 in 150 to 1 in 54. I mean, it's astonishing to me. So back then, we started with the therapies, and that consisted of mainly behavior therapy and speech therapy. And then also, because we lived in San Jose at that time, he was put into a program that was funded by basically, I believe it was Santa Clara County. So it was a special ed program for children with autism. So that was actually very helpful because then I got to see other parents and kind of what they were doing and things like that. And it did lead me down a path of getting him private behavioral therapy, which I can't remember now if that was covered by insurance. It must have been because it's so expensive, but I think we had a lot of problems trying to get that covered, but we went through our pediatrician, et cetera. But the behavior therapy was very good for Joe because, as I mentioned, he had the rigid behavior, and he would just get fixated on things, or he just wouldn't want to do certain things, and that helped him a lot. But at that time, I didn't know a lot about nutrition or supplements or things like that. And there wasn't any research on that at that time. The only thing I did do, though, was in my gut, something told me to start eating only organic foods. And so we really took a look at our diet and focused a lot on healthy eating because I was a big advocate of that. I think Dana mentioned briefly that I actually have a background in, I worked in biopharmaceutical for 25 years, and I worked in medical research, mainly managing clinical trials. So I knew a lot of about science and kind of how things can affect our bodies, et cetera. And I just felt in my gut that the nutrition was a big piece of it. And so we really started focusing on that. And then the last part is the patients. So that was the big thing because it was very difficult. We were isolated in many instances, and his behaviors were truly something that I was just like, oh my gosh, how do we manage this? So it was a rough time. But throughout the years, he started improving, and I would say that, well, let me get back to the school. So he went to the special ed preschool, and then for kindergarten, he was in special ed, but then he started getting a little bit better, and they said, we would like to try to mainstream him. And he had this great kindergarten teacher. At that time, we had moved to Morgan Hill, and she said that she had a special ed background, and she would like to try him to be part-time special ed, part-time mainstream. And I really think that helped him a lot because he got to see the other behaviors of kids and try to model their behavior, et cetera. And he started letting go some of his rigidity. And the teachers would tell me things like, well, he can't really stand in lines, but as long as he's not last, he's fine. Because at first he wanted to be first. So he had to be first. So they said, okay, you're first in line. And then it was like, he's okay with not being first as long as he's not last. It's just little things like that. And then he would get fixated on certain colors. Everything had to be orange, or everything had to be purple, and he had to sit in a certain spot. But eventually he just started letting go of those behaviors. And then in first grade, he became fully mainstream, and I was a nervous wreck. But he had a great teacher. And she was like, he's doing well. Yes, he'll raise his hand and he's kind of out there with his thoughts, but it wasn't that bad. And then by second grade, he was at the point where he was starting to really learn and almost be at the same level as his peers, which is amazing because he had reading comprehension issues, speech delays, and the behaviors. Third grade was also a pivotal point. This is where I had his teacher. She told me that she could help me with his reading comprehension. And so she had a strategy about having him read, stop, think about it in a picture, and then he was able to comprehend what he was reading. And that strategy helped him. So after he started getting the educational pieces in order, he started to develop interests. And again, he's mainstream, so he's seeing these other kids do sports and do other interests. So what happened is that around 5th or 6th grade, he said he wanted to join the football team. So we weren't sure how he was going to do with that because of the attention span, et cetera. Let me just check my time. And he did it. We couldn't believe it. He could follow plays. He could follow the coach's orders. He could follow what he was supposed to do. So that was really a big deal. So he started off in flag and then he kept doing it. And, it was very successful. That we were cringing the whole time because we weren't sure if he wasn't going to be able to fit in, et cetera. And then the other thing he did was he said, I want to do the school play. So I was like, Joe, I don't know. I mean, you have to learn the lines and you have to listen, et cetera. So he tried out. I picked him up that day and I said, how'd you do? And he said, oh, I did pretty good. So really? Well, are you going to be in the play? And he said, yeah, and I have the lead role. So he ended up doing the lead role. He actually did it for 2 years. And the director didn't even know he was on the autism spectrum. I told him later, and he was floored. He couldn't believe it. He said he was the greatest kid he's ever had. He listened, he followed directions. So as you can see, he started just really basically letting go of a lot of his symptoms of autism. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. So then what happened is that I'd say by the end of 5th grade into 6th, he basically tested out that he didn't have autism anymore. But of course, it's a lifelong disorder. So, yeah, you can say he doesn't have it anymore, air quotes, but of course, we all know that it's still going to be around in the background. But I guess the point is that he basically lost his diagnosis according to the IEP. And that was probably around at end of 5th grade, going into 6th. So we went from an IEP where he tested out, and it was weird. He tested out, not only did he not have a speech delay anymore, but he tested out that he was gifted. So it was like a 180 almost. Very interesting thing that happened to him. And I just want to kind of go back that the only thing I really did was the behavior therapies and the speech therapies, and of course the school helped a lot, but also again, just the organic food. I really think that made a huge difference with him. So the other, I would say, point in his life that was a very positive aspect is that, and he talked about this at the Autism Tree presentation when he was the first speaker. He basically said that when he discovered art and animation, that it changed his life. So he had to do a presentation in 7th grade, and essentially he got the idea somehow to do it as an animation. And when he did his animation, it was unbelievable. He drew everything out. It was about the pulmonary system or something like that. And it was very well done. And that's where he started getting this interest to do these stick figures and to draw. and he started his YouTube channel called Kabloosh. And I was going to show you a video too, but I don't, in the sake of time, I don't think we have enough time to show you that. So you can just go to YouTube and, look under Kabloosh and you can see all of his videos. And he got so good at it that it really became a big part of his life. And actually this year, he entered a contest for California Special Interests to show a video, and he did an animation and he won third out of like 1,000. I think there were like 3,000 applicants. So he got like a little scholarship from that, and was the third runner up in that contest. So the animation became a big part of his life. And I guess the take home message here is that if you can find what your child is interested in and hone in on that and celebrate and support them, then that is one of the best things you can do as a parent. So here's a picture of Joe. As I mentioned, he just graduated from high school this year and he began college. And then I put plus new interests. So what happened is that he has his Kabloosh and his animation, but he recently started developing an interest in music. And so of course, given our experience, we're like, oh, well, go for it. But I mean, we don't have time to teach you how to play music, and I don't even play an instrument. So being Joe, he set out to learn how to play an instrument, and he has a drum set and a bass guitar, and I think it's only been like 3 or 4 months, and he's already playing songs, and he just teaches himself how to do things, and it's really, really interesting and great. So that's him pretty much today. I'm going to move on to my second son because I have a lot to say about him. He's actually my third son, but my second son on the autism spectrum. So I had my third son in 2009. And at that time, we'd already been through Joe and then my middle son, and life was great. Yay, wow, everything's going wonderful. And then he came along and he was my surprise baby. So it was a real shocker that I was even pregnant with him. And then, let me just get my watch here. And then what happened is that I basically saved my baby's life. And what I mean by that is that we went to see the heartbeat, which you see normally around 8 or 9 weeks. And there was no heartbeat. There was no baby there on the ultrasound. And so the OB was like, oh, I'm really sorry, but basically the baby didn't form and you're going to have a miscarriage and, blah, blah, blah. And so you're going to have to come back in a couple of weeks and we're going to have to do a D&C on you because your heart so far along that, we need to take the baby out, et cetera, et cetera. So of course we left there. My husband and I were really sad, and it was actually around Christmas time too. So it was, a major blow. But in my gut, I kept feeling like there's a baby there. I know there's a baby there. And being the researcher that I am, I just started going online, and I'm like, I know this baby is viable. I just know it. Excuse me, I have allergies today. So anyways, to make a long story short, I called the OB and I said, can I have another ultrasound before you do a D&C on me on Monday? And so she's like, I'm really sorry for your loss, but okay, come and see me. I'm actually working on Saturday in a different office. So I went to see her, and my husband didn't even go because he's like, I'm sorry, honey. But I went to see her, and lo and behold, there's my son on the ultrasound. And his heart was beating, his little arms were flapping, and it was a miracle that he was there. And she freaked out because she'd never had that happen before. But my son was there, he was alive, and he was viable. And she actually, sidebar, but she ended up changing her practice. And she said she will always, always double ultrasound people before she does a D&C in the future. So that's how big of a deal it was.
Mhm.
So there's my little baby. And he actually was a completely normal pregnancy. We did scans, everything was normal, all the tests, everything fine. And he was great. Again, completely typical birth, nothing happened. And then, of course, around the age of 18 months to 20 months, we started seeing a change. So he completely regressed. And it was like this. His eyes became glossy. He stopped responding to his name. He started having issues. So here I am. And of course, that led to years of therapy, nutrition, and patience. But I have to say that my youngest son is a little bit more affected by autism than Joe was. At first it was a lot of, he had definitely had a speech delay and more sensory issues. So he had some behaviors, but it was less behaviors, more speech delay and sensory this time around. So because of this, and because I had the experience that I had before, I had to really focus in on my son and try to help him. I was devastated to get the diagnosis of autism. It was a dark, dark time. But I also know that I'm a warrior and that, this is my son, and my husband's actually very good about, acceptance, and we need to go on with our lives, where I'm like, I'm going to do something. I have to fix this. But I have to say that the years with my son Danik have been, of course, it's extremely hard, but he is so sweet and happy. And he teaches you a lot. He teaches us a lot. So what I've learned from him is that, number one, the best thing I did is start therapy. And Autism Tree is great about get that early intervention if you can. I mean, it's so, so important. The earlier you can get the diagnosis, the better. And also the more support you're going to get, whether it's through your insurance or through your school or through the state. So I was able to get San Andreas Regional Center involved with him, and therefore I could get programs that I needed. And then also we got respite. And I know that a lot of people looking at this are probably from California. So if you can get, San Andreas in your area, you get support. And then also the other thing that happened is that I had to quit my job because I could not work anymore because of him. He needed a lot of help. So I was able to get IHSS, which is in-home health support. And that's very helpful for parents who aren't able to work and have to support, a disabled child. So that's something to look into. But the biggest thing with him is that I started looking at nutrition, and I'm going to get into that in a minute here. But the other aspect is that he's not capable of going into a mainstreaming situation. So I had to really focus in on his educational needs. We did start in a special ed program, but I've also had him switch to, he went to a private autism school for 2 years. And that was really helpful because they were able to give him the individual therapy and attention that he needs. And we just moved last year. So he was at the private autism school for 2 years, but now he's at another program, which is at it's a special ed program, but it's at a middle school, and they actually allow for mainstreaming. So that's been a huge, huge change. And it's been very helpful. Like, he's able to read now, and he's able to follow directions, and he's able to model after the other kids. So here are the tips that I wanted to, kind of the meat of what I wanted to talk about. And the first tip is that basically, it's important for parents to or anybody, that's watching this, is to kind of identify, are we talking about a child that was born delayed, So, they, at birth or around, the early times, if they showed a genetic predisposition, they showed signs very early on, or did you see a regression? So as I mentioned, both of my sons were regression. They were completely normal. And then around the age of 18 months to 20 months, they changed. So the thought is that we have the born delayed and then we have the regressive autism. And a lot of researchers show now that the regression is not just genetic, but it's genetic and some type of environmental issue that tips the scale. So you have maybe you're predisposed, but it's like pulling the trigger on the gun, right? So, and environmental factors can be anything from, our air to our water to, viruses to pesticides to, there's so many different factors. So in our case, it was regression. So the first thing that I did was I had to really fix my son's gut. I'm talking about my youngest son now. He had horrible, horrible gut issues. It was worse than autism. He was so constipated when he was about 3 or 4 that we took him to the doctor and she did an x-ray and she's like, I've never seen someone backed up like this. He has like 3 feet of poop in him. So what happened is that through my occupational therapist, who was amazing, she linked me into a integrated nutritionist, and that changed my life. She was extremely smart, and she started looking at his diet, and she turned me on to probiotics. Now we hear about probiotics now a lot, but back then, I mean, it really wasn't well known, but it's so important. I mean, our gut has 1 trillion bacteria, and now researchers are seeing that there's a direct relationship between our gut and our brain, and our gut and autoimmune diseases, and our gut and how we feel, and our gut and disease. I mean, it's just, the list goes on. So the probiotics completely changed my son's gut, and he started going to the bathroom normally. And like I said, I mean, it was horrible. I mean, he was so backed up, he would leak, and it just, obviously it caused a lot of problems. So the other thing is that, again, I already was doing like the organic, non-processed. I stay away from dyes. I didn't mention here, but we actually did gluten-free, dairy-free for 3 years, which was extremely hard, but it did help set his gut. Some people have done it and they haven't seen a lot of changes. Other people swear by it. So if you haven't tried it, I would try it, and, maybe just take out one thing at a time. For us, I still don't do milk, but the gluten's really hard. It's really hard to get away from that. And then the other thing is that this is just through my research, or I know that, you need to determine, does the child have infections? They might have yeast infections. They could have viral infections. There could be mold in your house that are causing issues. And then the last thing is there's also this thing called mitochondrial issues, where the child is not able to, there's issues with the cell, the mitochondria are not working properly. And therefore, a lot of these children have low muscle tone, they're lethargic, or they might have like learning disabilities. So these are things to look at. Some of you may have heard of this gene called the MTHFR. And this is a very popular one now. It's talked about in the community. And basically what that has to do with is that the child does not methylate normally. So, I mean, it's thought that like 90% of our kids have this. And I actually had my son tested for that. He does not have it, but he has the genes right directly before it. So the doctors that I worked with were like, basically like, even though he doesn't technically have that gene, he has methylation issues. So that explains the whole gut, like why he doesn't, eliminate normally. And it helped me realize that the diet is going to be a big aspect. So the other thing is that I have helped to balance my son's brain chemistry, and also my oldest son too. So a lot of times children with autism, you come to find out, you'll do testing. And number one, you might find out that they, like I said, they don't methylate normally. And then the other factor is that they could have been exposed to heavy metals or pesticides. So I had my son tested for pesticides, and we used to live on a house that was former orchards. We bought our house brand new. And we didn't think anything of it when we bought the house, but come to find out, that house had a lot of pesticides in the soil. And when he was a very young child, he used to, we didn't have our backyard done yet, so he used to eat the dirt. And so I often wonder if that was a big factor, because I had him tested for what's called glyphosate, which is Roundup, and it was, off the charts that he had it in his system. So, and this is after years of drinking great water and eating organic and, that type of thing. So like I mentioned before, there's a lot of environmental factors to think about. And the more that you can take away the toxins and reduce the burden on the child, the better the child will respond. Again, if there's a regression. So we have started working on this brain chemistry, and I use supplements, but I wrote here, or medication if you need it. So my oldest son, Joe, needs a little bit of medication for his anxiety. And that's great, that's fine. He doesn't have a lot of side effects from it. So you have to find the right one. But with my youngest son, I give him a lot of brain chemistry supplements. And since I've started this in the past year, this is when he started reading, he started writing, and he started stimming a lot less. Like his stims have almost gone away. And it's because I've just balanced it. And I work with a naturopath on this. The person that I linked into, his name is Dr. Jared Skowron. He's at a clinic in Connecticut, and it's called Spectrum Awakening. So you can always Google that, and he's incredible. He really knows our kids. He even says he can help, if the child has had a genetic predisposition to autism too. But essentially, by getting the right supplements in my son and balancing out his brain chemistry, it's really helped. So the last thing, just as a tip, is that it's really important to pursue therapy. The earlier, the better. You've probably heard this many times. But the other thing is that you also have to add in interests. So, Joe's a good example that once he started tapping into his interests, he flourished. That was with his art. And I've met so many kids, some kids like maps, some kids like trains, some kids like, music. It just depends on the child, but they have so many talents that are hidden many times. And if we could tap into that, it's really helpful. And even if your child is just playing video games or they love the iPad, try to be there with them. In our case, a lot of times, we go on walks and hikes in nature, and now we live in the redwoods. And so we go to the beach and we go to the redwood forest and we do hikes. And my son loves the outdoor. He loves swimming, and he loves taking hikes with my husband, things like that. And it's really helped him a lot. And then the last thing is the type of schooling. And, I found this out with my second round of autism. It's so extremely important. If your child is not thriving in school, then they're not going to be happy, and bad things are going to probably happen. So do your very best, whatever you can do, to try to get them the appropriate setting and the right setting where they're thriving. And it might not be, mainstreaming, because, that's hard to do, but try to find the right classroom. I know it's extremely hard with the lack of teachers that we have, but if you can get the right environment, it will really help. And then the last tip I have is just self-care for parents. because we all know it's extremely stressful, and we lose ourselves, we get depressed, we don't see a lot of changes, it's slow going, we're isolated, we can't go to barbecues like, typical developing families can. And it's just so important that you try to find something for yourself. And whether that's, whatever, exercise or other interests that you might have. So this is my youngest son, and I wanted to just highlight again that, once we started getting everything, the nutrition, the brain chemistry, and then he loves the outdoors so much, he began to learn. And here's just a few pictures of him being extremely happy. And the last thing is, just again, a happy child is a happy life. And if you can tap into their happiness, then all the other things are just gonna kind of melt away, and you're gonna feel a lot better about things no matter what comes your way. So that's pretty much it for me. I wanted to just kind of stop a little bit early in case anybody had any questions. And if I've missed anything, let me know. The one thing I did want to say is that, there are resources online. Of course, we have Autism Tree is a great resource for you for information and help. And I did mention that, I started working with this naturopath in Connecticut, and it's Spectrum Awakening. And the other thing I usually use a lot is this resource called Taka. And they have a lot of great information, a lot about mitochondrial issues and gut health and things like that. So you can look up if you need more information. So that's it for me for today. Did anyone want to? I'm going to stop sharing.
Perfect.
And
thank you, Tanya.
If anyone has any questions.
Yes, definitely. I want to give a shout out to Jeff. He's been typing in the chat and commenting, and I love it. I love it all, Jeff, what you've been saying. So I know you had your hand up. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you were saying in the comments and any other things you want to share with Tanya?
Well, I think the one thing I do want to mention is that, yes, school setting is very, very important, because it's not just the classroom that we have to consider. It's also the cafeteria, particularly during lunches. And then there's also something I'm very passionate about is school safety drills, and even school assemblies, because neurodiverse students struggle mightily with school safety drills and school assemblies. I know I did, but I mean, school safety drills was one thing, but school assemblies, I kind of, I kind of had a mask on to hide my emotions, and I would leave school assemblies with like a really bad migraine. And another thing that also I also want to go back to is that the constipation of your youngest, probably because I think it's also stress related as well, because when I was 24, which was about 8 years ago, I ended up having a colonoscopy, and I ended up getting diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome because of my stress. And when we're stressed, our bodies, tend to act stressed as well. So it's very, very common, especially with neurodiverse children, that that we can't really express our emotions because of our autism or neurodiverse condition, that we end up, our body ends up stressing in a way that most people would otherwise not stress under. So it's all a matter of the of the brain as well. And then and one other thing that I put in, two more things. I put in the chat that there's an autistic an animator with autism. Her name is Danny Bowman, and she runs her own animation studio near Los Angeles called Danimation. So if Joe would ever be interested in meeting her, I put her website in the chat wall. And then also, if you're ever interested, feel free to visit my website, going the distance, it's, I put the link in the chat wall for you.
Thank you. I will do that.
Mm.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
Thanks, Jeff. You always provide so much value to our Lunch and Learns, and I really just thank you for that.
That's what I'm here for.
I know that we have another question from a mom right now, Carroll Waldman. Hi, Carroll. You can go ahead and introduce yourself to Tanya.
Okay. Hi, Tanya. Wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
My name is Carroll Waldman, and I have a son, Andrew, who is on the autism spectrum. And I gave a talk this summer about my journey with Andrew. But my question is to you, of course, my son is in college now, and wondering how your son is doing, and does he get any services, and how's that going for him?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So he actually, it's been a little bit interesting. So he really wanted to go to UC Santa Cruz, and he was on a waiting list until July 31st. So, and then we found out he did not get in, unfortunately. As you probably know, the UC systems are, it's kind of hard to get in. So anyways, he's been going to a community college, which is local. We actually live near Santa Cruz, so his idea is to transfer. But he was going to go for digital media, and now all of a sudden he's like, I think I want to do computer science because I want a bigger, kind of a more general degree. So he's been doing great, but it's hard because COVID, most of the classes are online, and he's just struggling a little bit with it because he wants to meet people. He's at that age where it's like, it's time to go. It's time to, make connections. And I have to say, it's a struggle at this point because how are you going to make friends if you're doing everything online? And so that's where we are. I would say he's, it's like this. It's some days it's good and some days it's not so good. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So he's finding his way. He's finding his way. I think it's just going to take a little bit longer than the average person because of what we're dealing with, it's the situation we're in. Yes, I was hoping that he would go away and stay in the dorms and that type of thing, but that didn't happen for us. So now we're on a different path and I have to accept it.
Mhm.
To be continued.
I love that. And all
Tanya, I think it's great that Carol's on the line. Carol, do you want to say anything to Tanya about kind of the advisor and guidance you've been giving our families from your own experiences?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing more research on my own as well, learning about the college, resources and programs. My son happens to have gone away to University of Wisconsin. He went last year during the COVID year and lived in the dorm, and he's back now in the apartment. And I think in general, these kids, there are great milestones they make in their own time, and there's challenges, and a lot of them, their path is not exactly, the same it would be for a neurotypical, but I'm still learning, and I just think they sort of just develop in their own time. But if you decide a different college or whatever he decides to do, I mean, there are definitely colleges that have more autism support programs. There's also something called Virtual Hall that I use that is online, but kind of guide Andrew into the life skills, some of the academics, but a lot of it is, helping him, okay, how are you going to socialize this week? It's like having this coach, and it's something new, but the person, Perry, is going to be at the neuroscience conference, right? He's going to talk more about the program, but there definitely are resources out there, and it's evolving.
Yes,
so, if he doesn't go where he wants to go or whatever, there are options, or if he goes somewhere there wasn't as much support program, there are outside resources. So,
okay, well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're kind of, Tanya, we're looking at Carroll as one of our experts to have moms like yourself that are still working it out with Joe.
Mhm.
I think, it's a good thing that if for you to keep in touch with Carroll on that subject matter. And then, like Carroll was saying, Harry wrote a book called Taking Flight, and he's pretty amazing. I know without a doubt you would really be blessed knowing him, his book. And the biggest thing I got out of talking to him is that I didn't realize is that he wants to start working with families when their kids are juniors because he's experienced so many different permutation combinations. And he feels like if he can meet the family earlier in the process, he could do a lot of good.
Mhm. Yeah, that's when you start, thinking about where you want to go, what you want to do, and then
Yeah.
applying, so that's, yeah, junior is the time.
I'm really happy Carol was on this call. I don't see everybody right now on the screen, just you. So it was nice.
Me too. I try when I can.
Carol.
Yeah. But no, I'm really trying to learn a lot about the college and then, of course, the workforce after, because a lot of these kids, Andrew's 20. So this generation, having talked to Dana about this, what's next for these kids and how can we, have neurodiversity as part of, just common in the workplace and how do we, mostly how do you prepare these kids? And I think we definitely need to have the resources and find out how we're going to do this. So I'm very much keeping up with I'm trying to keep up with what's going on now.
Yes, it's a very important point.
Yeah.
There's a cliff and it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really special too, Tanya, because Joe is our first generation, and then Danik is the second generation coming up. And I keep telling everyone, like, we need to come together and do better for this next generation, more opportunities, more, the pathway to be clearer so that college and placement after college isn't so difficult. Because of the work that everyone's doing together, like Carol. So it's something that I find myself talking about every day. Is we've already raised a generation of kids, like that's where we're at, is to focus on making sure they're all launching and getting where the best opportunities are for them.
And they have amazing talents, and we need to tap into that and get them placed where they can be successful, because there's so many of them that can contribute to our society in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think Jeff's been very, very active on this call, and I see you typing in right now too, Jeff, is he has been literally coming out and meeting with parents and telling them how to have their children become self-advocates, which is so relevant. And so I think, we've never kind of had so many adults coming out and wanting to tell their stories to Autism Tree. And that's been a huge blessing. We had Mark come down from LA yesterday and meet with Rebecca and I, and he's 69 years old. He had been living in Florida with his mom, and he just decided that he was going to do it, move to LA and pursue his dreams. Wow. So he's trying to be an actor, and he's an Uber driver, and it's incredible, so I think it's a really big message he has, because what does he have to lose? I mean, at some point, right, we have to go for it. We have to go for our dreams. And I think, that's what a big part of your talk was, is following the interests. And I know I've always been thankful that we did that with G, and I feel like we're all kind of doing that together on the Lunch and Learns too, kind of uncovering like, what are the interests and how can we, thank you for bringing up, I'm sure Rebecca wrote down what you were mentioning as resources, because we'll send up a follow-up and it will be, people can replay this Lunch and Learn, and it'll have the resources you mentioned linked in, and Joe's YouTube channel too.
Yeah. Yep.
Can't wait to see that. Well, before we go, I want to take a group picture of everyone who's on this call. And to commemorate this moment, thank you, Tanya, for an awesome talk. I learned so much from you, and I feel like it was all encompassing of like the environmental factors and the nutrition and how important early intervention is. And now the whole college, you really just covered it all. So I love it. If you want to share your camera, now is the time to do it. I'll take a little screenshot. Everybody just smile at the camera. I'll do a little countdown. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Well,
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, everybody.
Great meeting with you.
Thank you. Everybody take care.
Have a great rest of your day.
Take care, guys.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye.